Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. I'm Thomas Vick, joined by my co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how are you today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. It's good to be back recording with you as we continue to grow the thought of helping lawyers launch their own law firms. If they're considering stepping out on their own and starting their own firm, hopefully this podcast can be a great resource for that. So I'm excited about that, excited to get to chat with you. How are you doing?
I am good. I'm getting ready for the mini marathon in Indianapolis on Saturday, 2 days from now. So I'm going to run 13.1 miles and then lie on a couch the rest of the day on Saturday. So that's what I'm getting ready for.
That's awesome. That's a great event in downtown Indianapolis every year, and it's pretty cool. How many times have you run that now?
I think this will be my fifth or sixth time. I was telling a friend of mine that I might try to do the mini marathon 20 times. That would be a good lifetime goal, do it 20 times. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see how this one goes. But
That's right. See how the knees hold up.
that's right. That's right. Well, we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about matters in Clio, and we could kind of left it off in our last episode discussing that transition from you know, a client hires us to setting up the matter within Clio. And today we wanted to talk about what do we do with the matter now? How do we handle the matter now that it is in Clio, or just from a law office management standpoint? How do we want to handle it? And both you and I use Clio Manage, which is a very popular law practice management program. And relatively recently, they have added on a new feature called Matter Stages. And I just recently added it to my practice just within the last month or so. So I'm getting familiar with the capabilities that Matter Stages has built within it. And I thought it would be a good idea for us to discuss Matter Stages. What has been your experience with Matter Stages?
I really like what Clio has done just from an overall practice management standpoint. They kind of take these concepts that you're seeing in various third party tools and bringing them into the law office management experience, if you will. And so matters used to be basically just kind of a list of all your open matters, and then you would one by one click on them, open them up, and see what was going on. And it was sort of hard to get your head around how extensive that list was, especially if it got more than one screen length long. And so what they did is they kind of brought in the Kanban kind of philosophy to these stages where you can now stack up your matters by various stages in their life cycle. And so I thought it may be easier to explain this if we kind of use a practice area specific example, because as you get into Clio's stages, you filter down by a particular matter type or a practice area to design how you want those stages to work. And so we both practice in the estate planning world. So I thought that would be maybe a helpful example for us to use and walk through how that gets set up. You want to kind of start with what stages you've come up with, and then we can talk about how things happen as you transition from one stage to the next.
Yeah, so for estate planning matters, I've got the following stages. I've got drafting documents. Next stage is attorney review. Next one is client review. Next one is prepare for signing appointment. Then the next one is post signing appointment procedures. And you can probably, intuitively understand what is happening with each one of those stages. And kind of what you were mentioning, having the matter stages in front of you helps you to visualize where each particular matter is in its life cycle. So when a client has hired me to do an estate plan, I will create the matter, sync it over from my CRM over to Clio Manage, and then I will make sure that the practice area is correct because the matter stages are based upon the practice area. So you make sure that that's correct. And then you put it into the correct matter stage. And so for an estate plan, I say drafting documents. And that I've got it set up so that task lists are associated with each particular matter stage. So once I have put an estate planning matter into a drafting document stage, that automatically generates tasks for my paralegal to start drafting. Making sure, do we have a signing appointment set up? Do we have the engagement letter signed? These are, just things that we double check that we have before we, get going on everything. And then, do we have the client intake form? Do we need to make a phone call for that kind of thing? Or, and it's based upon a timeline within the task list that you set up. So we kind of want to have an estate plan draft ready for the attorney to review 3 or 4 days after it's been assigned. So that puts into motion a timeline for us. And then after that stage has all of its tasks, completed, then the paralegal can move it over to attorney review. And what that does is the attorney will get a notification, a task assigned to him that says you need to review this client's estate plan documents before they can be sent out. That's a pretty simple stage, and I'm able to move the matter over from attorney review to client review, which tells the paralegal, okay, I've got a new set of tasks. I've got to send these out to the client for review to make sure we've got names spelled correctly, the documents are doing what the client wants them to do. And so that's just kind of the beginning stages of an estate plan. And, there are similar types of things happening with getting ready for the signing appointment. Are the documents printed? Are the binders ready? Automatic tasks are created that way. And then after everything is signed, again, more tasks to make sure we've got everything buttoned up. So it's just a great way of keeping track of where you are in the process because, as lawyers launch and they're growing practices, they have more than one matter going on at the same time, and then more than one matter within a practice area going on at the same time. And it's hard sometimes to remember, well, where was I with this client last week? Where am I this week? What about this other matter that I talked to the client about, but I haven't really finished up the conversation? All those kinds of things you can visualize in matter stages. And it just gives you an overview. It doesn't give you the full, it's a 30,000 foot view. It doesn't give you every single task in front of you of what needs to be done. And really, that's the beauty of it. It's the beauty of the simplicity of it. And so I've really enjoyed it. And I think that it helps my staff to understand where we are. And to the extent that it's helping out your staff and helping out you, I mean, I highly encourage people to have that kind of system.
Yeah, and as we talked about last week, kind of the backbone to this working well for your office are these checklists and task lists. And you can see that Clio's put a lot of thought into each of the updates that it rolls out to its users. And so you can utilize all of these tools in a very integrated way to see how your practice is doing and where cases are in their life cycle from various viewpoints. And one of the benefit of these matter stages is you can drag and drop the matter and feel like you're interacting with it a little bit, right? You're moving it from one point on the left to the next point on the right or beyond there to the applicable stage. And it helps you both from sort of a productivity standpoint, making you feel like you're actually making progress because you're moving something. And it's not just sitting there or you didn't just do data entry to change a date or something. And that visual representation, Clio's done a good job of surfacing just a few key pieces of information for you, right? So you can see the matter reference field and the matter description. You can see the primary client contact linked right there. And for me, what's really important is it shows you how long in days that matter has been in that stage. And so if you come in to that matter stage and you only look at it once a week, you'll know, boy, anything above 7 days, I haven't looked at and I really need to get there. And Clio sorts that or allows you to sort that by oldest, newest, those kind of things, which is pretty cool. And so once you move a matter out of that stage and back in, it picks up day one again. So if you've touched it, you can just kind of move it around and reset. Although you got to be careful if you have that automation piece attached to that, because you may reassign tasks that you didn't mean to. And so really the way to think about it is this is the process from left to right, how the matter is going to work its way through our system. And there are times, at least in my practice, where we've gotten through part of it and something has occurred and we have to move it back and do it again. And so we haven't yet, because we had another system kind of built in the background to manage these things prior to matter stages being available. So we've sort of adjusted that, and now we're integrating both back into our matter stages as well. And so one of the things I love, though, is when I'm done at the conclusion of a signing, I can move that matter into signed. It's going to go ahead and put in my closing checklist, and everything else is just going to get taken care of. I don't have to think about it again. And it gets out of the system. All the files are going to be moved at the appropriate day, and it's sequenced out so that it doesn't overwhelm our staff to say, oh, I've got all this stuff to do in one day. We use the date dependencies that we talked about in the Clio tasks to go through. And then one more point on that. Sorry, I get excited about all this stuff,
Yeah.
but the one other thing that's really great on these tasks now is you can put in the estimated duration about how long a particular task should take. So especially if you're hiring someone new to come in and help you with that, that gives them a frame of reference to say, oh, well, this should take 30 minutes and it's taking me 2 hours. Well, yes, every time you do something for the first time, it's going to take a lot longer, but this gives you a goal to shoot for and a way for us to analyze, okay, this individual is spending quite a bit more time now. Maybe in a month, they're closer to that 2 months, and so on. And so just really great sort of data about the data that then we could talk about how Clio's using that with their AI to surface that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool as well. But yeah, so I'm a big fan of the matter stages myself.
And I think it is, I went through my matter stages, and I'm an estate planning attorney, but you can use it for so many different practice areas. I'm certainly not a personal injury attorney. You've got, more experience from a civil litigation standpoint than I do. But, you think about, okay, I'm drafting a complaint. Okay, we're going to do that. And now I've got to, do some motions or whatever, summary judgment, what discovery actions need to be taken. Each one of these can be a stage in the pipeline, trial being the last stage, mediation, all these things could be matter stages, and you just develop it, based upon your own particular practice area. One thing that we're starting to play around with is we've got a lot of guardianships, and every single year or every 2 years at the same time of the year, we've got to file an accounting or file a report with the court and let the court know how everything is going. And so, we've kind of broken it up into quarters. What quarter do we need to do this accounting? What quarter do we need to do this report in? And that will help us keep track of where we're at and what documents we need to get from the client and all that kind of stuff. So it's just so dynamic, and you can really tailor it to however you want it to go. And I think I may have mentioned on a recent podcast that you can create documents based upon when the matter stage is moved. So when a matter is moved from one stage to the next, you can set it so that a document is automatically generated. And from there, you may just have to print it and send it to the client or do whatever you got to do with it, but it's already in there if you've put in the proper custom fields. And I haven't gotten to that point, in all honesty, but that capability is out there and I intend to use it at some point.
Yeah, and to that point, there is a piece of Clio that is sort of in the beta works right now, which is their automation. And there's lots of things that you can do when a matter moves from stage A to stage B, or from stage B to stage D if you needed something different in each of those contexts. And so all of these tools are now kind of integrated and pulling to and working together to really help you surface the work that needs to be done and keep it moving forward. And so I think the challenge as you grow in your practice is the length of matters gets longer, which is a great thing, but being able to manage that and simplify it so that you can focus on the next thing, that next action that needs to take place to move that case to the next phase and serve the client well is really important. And then having your system as a firm that says, okay, if I'm not able to be here, I still want those instructions to be documented somewhere. And that's what I use those checklists for. You show up on a particular day, if I'm not even here to ask, I've probably answered 95% of the question, and you can at least keep moving forward while you're waiting for me to get back from court, for example, or out of a mediation, or what have you. And so many great things with that. On our matter stages for estate plan, we actually have a column for initial consults. And so each week, as I'm looking at those are new matters that are opening up with people I may not have met yet. And so I've got a list right there I can look at and say, okay, I don't recognize this name. Let's go find out who that is. Then we have waiting on information. So we may have the initial consult. They may be deciding if we want to move forward. They're going to provide us with some information or copies of documents from an existing plan. So we kind of have a placeholder there that we can look at. Then we have, like we have here are each of the steps. So we prepare their summaries. We send those to the client so we know we're waiting on a response from them. Once we get that back, we move it into drafting and then clients to remove or review and approve. And then if there's something special that the attorney needs to do as a result, we move it into their column and they get a task of, hey, you've got some documents to take a look at. Then we set up, in our parlance, what's called a design meeting, where we actually review the plan, make sure that we have it set up the way we want. And then once that document or once that meeting is done, we prepare it for signing. And then we have that signed category. So we have quite a few stages here that we've worked through. And part of this has been, well, we need a placeholder here because we've got multiple attorneys that are doing it in the office. And we want to make sure that we're sort of segmenting those lists out. And so every time we look at it, we come up with new ideas to make it a little bit more streamlined. Or, as you mentioned, once you move it from stage to stage, which separate tasks for that stage now need to be assigned and to who. And so we've been working on integrating that a little bit more into our practice over the last month or so.
Yeah, and your comment there about your instructions are always there for the client, that just reminds me of how important it is as you're developing a practice when you find yourself saying the same thing over and over again to a client. It's the same message every single time. Write it down, put it in a letter, and make it a template so that on the next time you can hand them the letter, still have the conversation, but that will be a resource to the client, and the client will be able to refer to that and maybe not have to have the second and third conversation that you had with the attorney the first time. Matter stages can help you do that for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, as you're building your own internal knowledge base and your internal stories that you tell to help explain the concepts. I think each of us lawyers has a little bit different take on how we explain the nuances of our particular practice area. And that's the thing that helps you have that personal connection with the clients to help them feel like they understand what's going on and they're comfortable with these somewhat esoteric legal concepts that you may be dealing with in terms of in the estate planning context. What's a revocable trust? What's an irrevocable trust? And those kind of things can be very overwhelming to someone who isn't familiar with the vocabulary yet. So when you think of an analogy that seems to resonate with your client base, make note of that and draw an analogy or draw a story around that to really help drive home the educational piece of, hey, this is really what we're doing. And we've got, Ray, who I practice with, has almost 50 years in the practice. So you can imagine the number of anecdotes that he has, or isms, we call them, that he has to help explain things. And make that your own, because that can be your own personality a little bit, and how you connect with your clients and what separates you from everybody else you went to law school with. You need to have that unique approach in your way of explaining it and helping the client feel like, oh, okay, I get this. And then that helps them dig into some of the more challenging topics, maybe to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point about putting your own spin on explanations to the client. I think that's really, really good. Another aspect of Clio, a new feature that has been added to Clio, has to do with email. Over the last, I don't know, a couple of years or so, Clio has allowed attorneys to be able to file emails into the Clio matter through, for instance, an Outlook add-in. And it's been a little bit cumbersome to use because previously you had to go through several steps to make it work. But now there have been some updates to how to use email for Clio. Seth, you I know are very excited about this. So wanted you to explain how it works.
I'm probably a little overexcited about this because I just appreciate the efficiency gains and kind of the return on investment for an action. And I've talked before, I think, about kind of these ideas of the rule of 3 times return. What I do hopefully can accomplish sort of a 3-to-1 return if I'm going to invest some time in figuring out how this thing works and how I'm going to integrate it into the practice. And this particular plugin is something that connects to Microsoft Outlook, and it works on desktop and it works on the web, but it never worked on mobile. And so if you have an iPhone or an iPad or an Android device with Outlook on it, you can see and respond to and do all the things that you need to do with email, but you couldn't really integrate it with Clio very easily. And so what I think Clio did is kind of took that approach and said, okay, how do we solve for this so that no matter what you're doing and no matter what device you're using, you can get those emails associated with matters in Clio. Oh, and as a bonus, because of the way we have the plugin set up, you can bill your time for that automatically. And so if you've not used the Clio plugin for Outlook, I would recommend you take a look at that because it's such a powerful tool to understand how it works. And the big picture is it sits in your Outlook toolbox and becomes an option for you to click on an email. And you'll click the Clio button and there's a couple different options there. But what it does is it creates sort of a folder structure for you in Outlook, mirroring your Clio matter list. And so if you're familiar with Clio, you may have used it to set up like your files and folder structure. You can do kind of the same thing, but it does it for you in Outlook. Once that initial file email has been set up in Outlook, any other email that you get in, you can now just simply drag and drop into that subfolder. And the system will then take the subject line of that email, and if your Clio settings are correct, it will use that as the description for your billing entry. It will add your default billing time entry to that, and it will save that email to the Clio matter. So you can go to the Clio matter communications tab and see all of those emails right there. And you have it filed in Outlook as well. And so you can file it, bill your time, and reference it easily later among the entire staff because they have access to that shared directory. So it's a 3-to-1 return and it works on your mobile device, which is really cool. So if I am reading an email, I don't have to touch it and put it into an archive folder to go back to remember to use the plugin later and save them all. I can just go ahead and move it as long as I know the matter number. And if I don't know the matter number, I can go get it from the Clio app on my device, right? So really a powerful tool that's there. It's very, very early in its release cycle. And so I'm sure additional adjustments will be coming to this plugin. Like, for instance, one thing I requested clarification on from Clio was, okay, is it possible that if I'm using an administrative matter, for example, to handle my internal firm communications, I don't want to bill those to the file necessarily, but I do want to be able to drag and drop them because it's much quicker to do that than click that plugin every single time and profile the record, right? And right now, it's going to bill all that time by default. It does not match the fact that in Clio Manage, I have that matter marked as non-billable. The Outlook plugin doesn't yet connect to that piece of the puzzle. And so I'm sure that's something that would be on their radar screen over time. But frankly, just the increased efficiency and reviewing the bill later and saying, yeah, I don't want to bill that, and I can mark it off easily at the billing time is just so much better on a day-to-day management piece. Again, probably overexcited about this capability, but since we do so much email and, I get hundreds and hundreds of messages a week, this just helps me significantly. So I don't feel like I'm just constantly clicking that plugin, typing in the matter, doing those kind of things. I can use keyboard shortcuts, move all these messages to the file, one swoop. You can select non-contiguous emails, which you never were able to do before, and get them into the matter, and it'll take care of all of it for you.
Yeah, the efficiency of being able to move it from your inbox to the particular Clio matter box within Outlook is going to be hugely efficient and definitely a big improvement as far as that's concerned. My experience with the email add-in for Clio and Outlook is it's great because you can share the email with your entire firm and there's a record of it. A lot of times people will send me an attachment that relates to a matter that everybody on the in the firm is working on, and instead of forwarding it to everybody, I can just save it in Clio. And not only does it save the email, but it saves the attachment in Clio. And just a ton of steps are taken care of just with that simple solution. That's where I've used the Clio add-in to Outlook the most. Is there's an email that I want everybody to be able to have access to. Let's now drag and drop it, and it's going to be in Clio for everybody to see. That's one great way of doing it.
Yeah, and again, just highlights the fact that Clio is continually working to make things better for their users. And one of the reasons I stick with Clio as a law practice management provider is because of these continual updates that you get. And they're thoughtful. They're not, this is the latest and greatest and shiniest necessarily. There's some of that, but this is reflective of user feedback. This is reflective of how lawyers really work. And a lot of us spend a lot of time day to day in and responding to emails. And so being able to do a lot of that work there without having to switch contexts can help you stay focused on, let me get through this, get over here and work on this, make sure I have a way to track it later, those kind of things. So you can combine those tools, flag for follow-up or snooze that email for later and move it into the file and it'll come back at that time, or what have you. So really, I think a good thing here would be really exciting for me to see how they continue to develop that integration.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the great thing about Clio is they're just always improving. It's a lot different than it was 10 years ago when I first signed up for Clio, and it's just gotten better and better, and really has made the practice of law more fun. I think since I've gotten Clio Duo, which we did an episode on, law practice is like, twice as fun as it used to be because, you're just so much more efficient with the tools that Clio has given you.
Yeah. And some of that is just the new and shiny, right?
Yeah,
There's an
that's true.
excitement to it that comes in and you're like, okay, this is cool because I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to get today because it's sort of dynamic and it's changing and it's responding to things that have happened and it's surfacing other things that, well, yeah, I've kind of forgot I needed to do that because that was a guardianship that we filed 2 years ago. It's coming up on its report. I haven't looked that far ahead in my calendar yet. That's, July, and I'm looking through June right now. And some of those things are on your radar screen a little bit sooner than you might have thought. And so it's just fun because it's not always the same thing every single day. You get something new to interact with. And I think that's what's really unique about the artificial intelligence and what's happening in terms of coming into our day-to-day life. And one thing I've been testing out on the AI front is this whisper transcription technology. And I'm using a specific app for that right now. And it's dynamite. And I've sort of let it replace my voice instructions that I typically will give to staff. And I just talk into my computer and I've got it set, the AI set to transcribe everything I say, but also put in the punctuation and also try to make it some sort of narrative instruction. And instead of giving that to my staff and letting them try to decipher it, I can see it. It transcribes it right there. If I need to make any changes, great. Then I add it into a task in Clio, assign it, put a duration on it. And that, I think, helps me clarify my expectations with staff. And also, I can go back and look and say, boy, I've assigned you quite a bit of work this week already. That's probably not realistic. Let's dial that back or let's move that in or something. That's been a great tool where before, I was more controlling what was being typed and how it was being presented. And I've kind of given up a little bit of that to the AI to see how it can work. And I'm not putting anything critical in there. It's more instructions of, hey, we need to change this order and those kind of things. So just a good way to test it out and see what it's capable of.
Yeah, and I haven't been one that has tried to dictate anything until basically the last 2 months. And, I'm doing it nearly on a daily basis. And the ability to be able to draft instructions through AI transcription is just unreal. That's one feature that has made law practice more fun. I'm just able to get to the next thing quicker. It's been amazing.
I think you got to be careful though, because there is sort of this habit that you will get into, and you're used to the AI serving as a translator of, do what I say, not what I do, or do what I want you to do, not what I do.
Yeah.
The AI can make up for a lot of that because it sort of knows the patterns and what you're looking to do. And in real life, you may have that conversation and realize, oh, wait a minute, I wasn't as clear as I thought I was, or I expected there to be another translation step between this and that. And that can have some humorous results as well. I found myself, and I don't know, maybe I'm old enough and dating myself here, but I will sometimes be talking to someone and I will dictate punctuation when I'm talking. And
Ooh,
you've been doing a lot of extra work when that happens because it's hi Thomas, comma. Wait a minute, I didn't need to put that in there. So there are some things that you just have to be mindful of. And I think the key from my perspective is using these types of tools within a defined framework, right? So you're going to set out your goals and you're going to know from a practice standpoint your income goals and your time goals and those kind of things. And make sure that you stick to those as best you can, because you can work all the time. And I think a lot of lawyers have that personality where we're trying to help people, we're trying to solve problems, and we can get caught up in that. And you need to have some of those guardrails in place. And I know you've done a good job of that in your practice. And we were talking just before we even got on the call to record about we have to say no to some things, good things even that are coming our way, and opportunities that may be helpful, and say, wait a minute, in light of everything else that I've already committed to, how could I work that in? And no AI tool can manufacture more time, right? So
yeah, yeah. Well, I think this has been the best episode ever, period.
I think you mean exclamation point.
Exclamation point. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, it's always a fun time to chat with you, Thomas, and I hope folks can kind of catch that really our heart and passion is helping other lawyers who want to launch their own law offices and serve their clients, and do that in a way that they can set up sort of how that should work. And our discussions here can maybe serve as a launch pad for that. And so that said, where can folks go if they want to find out more about Lifetime Legacy Lawyers?
Go to YouTube and search Lifetime Legacy Lawyers. We've got a bunch of videos with a lot of resources. I'd encourage everybody to check that out. Click subscribe, support our channel so that more people can learn about us and learn how we're trying to help lawyers launch.
Well, Thomas, thanks as always. Really appreciate the time and information today, sharing the behind the scenes look at what happens at Vick Law. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, Seth.